Okay, so some of the most common root causes of allergies, atopic disease, whether that be eczema, allergies, asthma. Again, this is more of a genetic thing. Um, we start to nowadays learn something called the hygiene hypothesis, which is the idea that all that the rates of allergies and asthma and atopic stuff is increasing in the world because of our focus on cleanliness. So that's when it's saying basically our immune system is developed in tandem with our environment, with the gut, with the microbiome, with eating the dirt, with going outside and playing in plants. This is how our immune system develops. And so nowadays, many of in our world, we're spraying the playgrounds with antiseptics, antibiotics. I don't even know what they're spraying it with now. So we have this hyper clean immune system, and our body isn't learning how to react appropriately to things, what's safe, what's not. And so this is why we get more of an incidence of the atopic allergic diseases. Also, common things to look for: gut inflammation, so food sensitivities over time, parasites, and viruses. So this is something I haven't touched on yet, but it's something I ask and investigate in every single one of my patients and clients, and also yeast and candida and fungus. So just like funky things growing in the body. Again, a lot of us have it, whether we're in TSW or not. But these things they can trigger immune reactions, they can trigger all sorts of crazy things to happen in the body. So we definitely want to do a deep dive. And so asking yourself, well, actually, I'll go into those questions later, but we do 100% want to be conscious of other funky things that could be causing this. And then environments, we're going to talk about that in deep depth here. So environmental triggers, like I was saying, obviously spraying is the biggest one and most common one that causes allergies for people. And this is because of the abundance of pollen, because it's the season of growth and birth and pollen. So that's just around. But you also want to pay attention to other seasons that you might be triggered, because it's not just spring that people get allergies, and it can give us a clue as to what we're reacting to again. So testing can help us as well, but paying attention to our bodies and paying attention to the seasons can be also the most helpful. So spring, if you react a lot to things in spring, probably pollen is a culprit. Realizing I did these seasons out of order, but that's okay. If you react a lot in fall or in the summer, if you react a lot to things in the summer, grass could be an issue. Ugh. And then if you react in the summer, also heat and humidity, that can be a big trigger for people as well, especially if skin is an issue, if skin is your problem. Moving into fall, ragweed. Ragweed is really high in fall, but this is also when mold season starts to come. And then moving into winter, sorry, excuse me guys, I'm going to mute myself for a second. Okay, I'm good. Got like dust in my throat. So mold is a big one in the winter. So if you live somewhere, like I used to live in the Pacific Northwest, cold and damp, mold is when it's in, like, even in the UK and Europe, it's cold and damp, a lot of old homes. This is when you want to be really aware of mold. So this is in your home and your work. And then obviously there's a little bit you can do with mold. You want to make sure everything is as clean as you can. Get your air filters cleaned, get your ducts cleaned. But then some of it, you're at the mercy of the environment and where you live. So there are ways to desensitize yourself to mold. There's something called SLIT, sublingual immunotherapy. It's not available everywhere. It's kind of still elusive. It's like the alternative to allergy shots. So I'll talk about that more tomorrow. But at the end of the day, mold and environment is kind of an obstacle to cure. It depends on your body and what's going on, and like if it's worth it. Essentially, like, mold wreaks havoc on the body on so many levels just beyond the allergic system. So if you're living somewhere that there's a lot of mold around, It's like a high priority to get out if you can, that building. But within, also just realizing life is life. So I'll leave it at that. So some of the most common triggers, like we were talking about, the most common food triggers, milk, eggs, fish, shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, and soybeans. So these are the things, if we do it like a traditional elimination diet, these are the things that we would remove mostly. There are, other things that are common that trigger people often. Nuts trigger people often, grains trigger people often, like citrus foods sometimes. And here I'm talking about specifically things that often cause allergies or sensitivity. Sorry, I'm not talking about high histamine foods, because I know that we could go down so many roads with diet. We will talk about that tomorrow, but I'm just talking here specifically about finding things that are triggering your immune system from more of a root cause. So what are you actually allergic to? So all of you potentially will have a little bit of a sense of what you're allergic to or not, but these are the foods that are most commonly triggering people. These pollens, molds, again, we talked about chemicals and pets. Okay, chemicals. This is what I was remembering. I didn't want to forget talking about when I was talking about testing. I didn't talk about patch testing and chemical testing. So these are also abound in the environment and could be triggering a whole bunch of stuff to happen. So in the Western world, what they'll do is more of like a patch test, to like put it on the skin and see if you're actually reacting. That can be obviously really helpful for contact dermatitis. In the naturopathic functional world, there are other tests we can use to sort of see what's going on in terms of like chemical, how your body is breaking down chemicals or detoxing stuff. Some tests might be like an organic acids test is one that I use often. So if someone is like super sensitive to a lot of things and potentially chemicals, we would do that to see what their body is breaking down, what they're sensitive to, and what metabolites are showing up. Often these are urine tests or stool tests or sweat tests or saliva tests because it's breaking down metabolites or checking metabolite breakdowns. You can't actually often measure direct toxic levels. Heavy metal testing, obviously another one that we can do. That's a urine test, doing the same thing as testing the breakdowns of the metals in the urines. What's the other one I was just gonna say? Like mold testing, you could do heavy metal, oats. I forget, but yeah. So those are the ones that we would use. There's also like the hair heavy metal testing. Hormone testing can help us figure out if you're thinking that you have like a hormone disruptor. Okay, last thing I want to touch on today is oral allergy syndrome. This is kind of more of a fun and interesting one and quite common. And one of those things that it's like, oh, that's like so common, but maybe people don't talk about it often. And, I just wrote this slide and I'm realizing that like last month they changed the name of oral allergy syndrome to like pollen, it's something to do with pollen, something or other. So this is outdated. This is not factual. There's a new and fancy name for this, but formerly known as oral allergy syndrome. What it is if you ever notice that you eat a food, so common culprits are like cantaloupes, kiwis, avocados, raw carrots are common, apples sometimes are common. But yeah, you can see the list down here. There's a few random things, but what happens is you get that like itchy, fuzzy mouth feeling, your throat gets itchy, like it's kind of like a mini allergic reaction. And what that's all about is it's called formerly called oral allergy syndrome, and it's a cross reaction between the environment and your food. So this is like a hybrid sort of reaction. It's not a food sensitivity, it's not an IgG reaction. It's an IgE reaction, but it's not a complete allergy. It's just a little bit of a cross reaction in the mouth. So if you can look at this chart and all of this stuff, I should say, I've just created the course online, so it'll be the same format as the other stuff. I'm just going to cut this video up and I'll add it to the sections, but you'll have access to all of this stuff on the course. So this chart will be on there on the platform. But you can see some of the stuff that is cross-reacting. So for example, if you have issues with cantaloupe, like raw cantaloupe, that's a common one. My husband cannot eat cantaloupe because he gets this so bad. Then you're likely environmentally allergic to ragweed and grass. And so it's just kind of like, oh, okay, so I can't eat cantaloupe, it triggers me. I get flares of allergies and whatever in the fall, and because that's when ragweed is high, and summer, so around that time. Okay, so like starting to realize that, okay, this is going to be a tough time for me. I'm starting to get triggered by these foods, by these things. Fall is when my immune system is whatever. So this means that before fall, a few months, you really want to start beefing up your immune system. You want to start the antioxidants. You want to start all the protocol that we'll talk about tomorrow. You want to start really focusing on stress and taking care of yourself and making sure you're detoxing. And this is again, just about learning those clues. And vice versa here, if you know that you're severely allergic to like trees and pollens, then maybe avoiding or not eating some of these foods that are potentially going to cause that reaction. So even though, you ask yourself, even though it's not that serious of a reaction, are you willing to do it? Maybe yes, maybe no. You know it's causing inflammation in your body. So this is learning again how sensitive you are as a person and what you're willing to risk, I guess.